And so next up, we're going to learn more about that. We have Jack Blackwell, John Johnson, and Ashley Christiansen. Jack, I always want to say, just in a habit of saying state parks, but he's no longer with state parks. Jack's with the Chugach Alaska Corporation and is the Vice President of Lands and Resource for Chugach Alaska. That sounds impressive, Jack. Thrilled to have John Johnson here. John has been a resource for many of us to understand the history of Prince William Sound, the culture of Prince William Sound. John's the Vice President of Cultural Resources for Chugach Alaska, and Ashley works with the Community Development Program for Chugach Alaska Corporation. So, Jack, welcome. I'll let you take it away.
Good morning. On behalf of Chugach Alaska Corporation, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. We have a presentation, and as Paul mentioned, Ashley and John will be joining me as well. So we kind of broke the presentation up. But Chugach Alaska Corporation is the regional native corporation for Prince William Sound and the northern Gulf of Alaska. There's over 2,600 shareholders in this corporation, and at Chugach, our present and future is always taken into consideration with the decisions that we make. So the agenda today, as Paul mentioned, John Johnson will be covering the heritage section of the presentation, along with the Chugach Spirit Camp, and he will also give an update on a recent trip that he just got back from. He went to Berlin, Germany, and will share with us some of the artifacts that he was able to take a look at. John's the Vice President of Cultural Resources for Chugach. And then Ashley Christiansen will wrap things up with community development. She's Director of Community Development, and we'll share with you some of the projects and focus of work that she does. And then to start off with, I'll focus on the corporation history and mission and the lands programs. So with that, I would ask that you hold your questions till the end, and we'll go ahead and get started. So the Chugach people have lived in South Central Alaska for over 5,000 years. And they've been living off the land, coexisting with the lands and resources, and the land is our link to our culture, which is very important. This slide, I think, is a good example. Going back to the early 1900s with sea otter hunters leaving Valdez. In order to understand what the corporation does, it's really important to know the history of the corporation, and this goes back to how the Alaska Native claims were settled. I won't go back thousands of years, but in most recent history, in 1741, Vitus Bering landed at Kayak Island, which is part of the Chugach region. The Russians claimed ownership of Alaska over the laws of discovery, and ultimately sold Alaska to the United States in 1867. It's important to recognize that the Treaty of Cession in 1867 did not address the native claims, and it wasn't until over 100 years later that was finally addressed. There were a number of pieces of various federal legislation that were passed, including the Statehood Act in 1959. But this federal legislation that was passed did not address the native claims. In 1966, the Alaska Federation of Natives was formed, And one of their big goals was to address the native claims. Around this time, the U.S. Department of Interior Secretary Udall put a hold on land conveyances until the native claims were addressed. In the late 1960s, oil was discovered on the north slope of Alaska. And in order to build a pipeline to get that down to Valdez, the Native Claims, the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act addressed the native claims. It provided 44 million acres of into corporate ownership with Alaska Native shareholders, and that's roughly 10% of our state. And then it also provided $962 million to help offset some of the lands that were unavailable for selection. They were strategic or had been established in special purpose lands with the federal government. I will point out that while oil being discovered on the North Slope was a big driver with the Native Claims settlement, oil was the first oil well was drilled in Alaska at Katalla, which is just east of Cordova, and that was back in 1902. And Katalla produced oil which was refined into gasoline and diesel and kerosene between 1911 and 1933. So think about that. 1902, oil was discovered or oil well drilled at Katalla. You know, that was 35 years after the U.S. purchased the Alaska Territory. So the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act established 12 regional corporations. And so that's what Chugach, Alaska is, one of the 12 regional corps. It also established a federal Indian reservation, 200 plus village corporations, and a 13th regional corporation. Generally, the regions were defined by common heritage and shared interests. The boundaries do not directly represent land ownership. However, they did define the areas which the corporations could select lands to be conveyed under the provisions of ANCSA. The mission of Chugach Alaska Corporation, you can think of it in terms of pillars. There's three main pillars to our mission. First is, or one of which is profitability. Second is celebration of heritage, and then finally ownership of land. So profitability, heritage, and lands. And I think it's interesting with Alaska Native corporations in that they are structured to be profitable and yet still have a social component to their corporate structure. So our corporation has 9 board of directors. Sherry Beretta is chairman of the board. Under the board, we have our president, Josie Hickel. You may remember Josie from previous symposiums giving this presentation, but she's now the president of the corporation. And then the Lands, Culture, and Community team that's here today, we fall under the Community Values Center, but in addition to the three of us, Matt Ellis is also a natural resource specialist that's part of our team. The corporation has a diverse portfolio of operating businesses. Chugach was one of the first Alaska Native corporations to participate in the Small Business Administration's business development program, which allowed Chugach to pursue federal contracting opportunities. Chugach Alaska Services also provides oil spill response in Prince William Sound. All American Oil Field is active on the Kenai Peninsula. Hayden Cook is a refrigeration, air conditioning business in Hawaii. We also have a granite quarry that the corporation is developing in Port Gravina in the Sound, and then Rex is an electrical company in Chicago. So you can see it's a really diverse portfolio with 5,000 people employed by the corporation throughout the world. Our lands portfolio consists of almost 1 million acres in south central Alaska. This includes 378,000 acres of full fee estate. That's subsurface and surface. And then we also have 550,000 acres of subsurface estate as well. The region spans from the southern tip of the Kenai Peninsula, including the communities of Nanwalek and Port Graham, eastward across the northern Gulf of Alaska, and out to Icy Bay, just east of Icy Bay. It includes the Prince William Sound and the communities of Chiniga, Tutitlik, Cordova, Whittier, and Valdez. This map is focused more on the Prince William Sound region, but shows the land that we manage. The dark green is the full fee estate, so that's the surface and subsurface, and then the other colors are subsurface estate that we manage. This is the eastern part of the region over towards Icy Bay. And then the western part down the southern tip of the Kenai Peninsula. There are some issues with the surface and subsurface estate being split. So the ANCSA generally split the village corporation lands so that the village corporation would manage the surface estate, while the regional corporation would manage the subsurface. That was the general pattern across the state, and that's consistent with the Chugach region. After the oil spill, the Exxon Valdez Oil Spill Trustee Council had funding that they used to mitigate the effects of the spill. There's a variety of projects were funded, but most of that funding was used to purchase lands from village corporations in the spill area. And so, as I mentioned, the estate is split. So the village corporations decided to sell some of this surface estate. And at the time the lands were purchased, during the process, there were conservation easements that were placed on the surface estate. And then those lands were either assigned to the state or the federal government to manage. And it's kind of an interesting situation because the surface estate was provided or was acquired for habitat purposes, and yet the subsurface estate, which is dominant, allows for the development of mineral, subsurface mineral development. And so, go ahead. Because of this situation, in 2019, the Dingle Conservation Act included a section that required the federal government to look into this situation and study it, and then report back to Congress. And in December of 22, last December. The Bureau of Land Management was the lead on that study, and they released their report. And so basically the federal government fulfilled their responsibility of this land study, and the study includes a review of the ownership and use patterns, as well as the social and economic impacts. In addition, the study also identified accessible and economically viable land that could potentially be available for a land exchange. And so Chugach is reviewing this study. We have had discussions with the federal government on this, and we're still reviewing it. So finally, I'd just like to leave you with some examples of our land management efforts that are occurring in the Sound. In the Eastern Sound near Port Gravina, we're developing a rock quarry. As I mentioned before, Chugach is a corporation with a social component. And so part of that component is to help the corporation generate revenue while benefiting our shareholders and descendants with jobs. So this rock quarry will produce high quality granite for infrastructure projects such as breakwaters, riprap, armor stone, while helping to support and provide jobs in this area close to home. In addition, we also partner with various businesses. We issue permits to a number of companies for operating on corporate lands, hunting, ecotourism, material sales, gravel sales are some of the things we permit, as well as research. And then finally, we also recently, a few years ago, completed a carbon sequestration project as well. So with that, John, you're up next.
Good morning, everyone. And always good seeing you. You're all trimmed up, nice beard. I haven't talked to you in a long time. I think he's been around here forever, I think. Anyway, my name is John Johnson. I'm Vice President of Cultural Resources for the Chugach Alaska Corporation. My father originally was a commercial fisherman from the town of Cordova, and his mother was named Mary Chimovisky, who was born at the village of Nuchek on Hinchinbrook Island. This site at Hinchinbrook at Nuchek was also the site of a Russian trading post called Fort St. Constantine in Helen, which was built in the late 1790s. This fort also had one of the very first Orthodox churches in Prince William Sound. Before any church was ever built in Anchorage, this one at Nuchek was in operation. The older ones, there was, I think, Kenai, and then going towards Aleutian Chain, there's even older churches. And we built the church on the original ruins in the year 2000, and the name of the church was the Church of the Transfiguration, and it was consecrated in the year 2000 when we certainly have weddings out there. We have funerals, baptisms, all kinds of activities out there. My father, Fred, was also a World War II combat veteran who served in the South Pacific in Okinawa, Guam, Philippines. His two older brothers wanted to join the Army too and see the world. So they joined the Army and they shipped them to Whittier. That was kind of a dirty trick, I think, but they're mad. Cordova in the Copper River Delta is a migration corridor with numerous very distinct cultures, such as the Chugach, Eyak, Atna, and Tlingit would come together for war and trade. When I first started working at Chugach was 1975 as a logger and a laborer on the pipeline in Valdez. We were making big money back in those days, $12 an hour. people complain about that now, but back in those days, we had $15,000 in our pocket at the end of summer for 18. That's not too bad. And let's see the next slide. And this is a poster of Captain Cook up in the Snug Corner Cove, one of the first guys to come around and trade. That's not very clear photo, but it shows a large angiaks or umiaks, which could haul a lot of people in the small kayaks as well. And also in the back room, we brought about 8 different posters. Anybody is welcome to take some home if you want to hang them up somewhere. And if there's not any left, you can contact us and we can mail you some as well. Yeah, this story here was that it was recorded by an old guy named John Kalashnikov. He was a harbor master out of Cordova, but he recorded a migration story of the Chugach people. I was told by my grandmother's uncle, Chief Makarka Chinobisky. But basically the story talks about Prince William Sound being a solid glacier ice all the way out to the very ends of the islands. And as people are traveling around, they said, Chugach, hurry. What's that black thing sticking out of the snow and the ice? And it was mountaintops. So as the kayakers traveling around the flotilla zone, they decided to come deeper into Prince William Sound. The most southern end of Prince William Sound is probably the older occupations. And as the ice and the fjords started to open up, the animals would follow the ice and the people would follow the ice as well. There was another migration story talking about the first places people landed at was on Middleton Island. And then the next island was Kayak Island, where they left people. And the next island, they come up to Hinchinbrook. And then the next island, Montague or Suklook. And then they finally came to Kodiak, where they decided they liked that area the best because of the abundance of birds for making jackets and so on. I was getting a kick out of the first, when the Chugach first came in Whittier, the chief pulled his boat right up by the harbor down here before the boat harbor was here. And he told his people, we're just going to stay here long enough until the rain stops. And sure enough, they stayed here forever, 5,000. And then the Clinkets, they also have a great migration story. I used to talk to an old guy from Sitka, and when he tells us about all the stories in Controller Bay and Prince William Sound, he talked about the Clinkets being around during the Ice Age as well, and also he talks about a great flood that happened a long time ago. The Clinkets used to call Prince William Sound Chakuta, which means the largest bay in Alaska. And these Clinkets were real travelers as well. They traveled all the way down to trade with the people that had walrus teeth necklaces. That must be around Dillingham area or somewhere in that area. And the Whittier Portage here was real popular as a shortcut during the Russian days to pick up the Russian Orthodox priests in Kenai and bring them back to Nuchek. And also as a good shortcut for trading and warring with the Otnas here in Cook Inlet. And maybe the next slide. Now, this is one of my favorite places. There's so many places around. This is Cape Martin in Prince William Sound. And you can see the Martin Islands in the background. We just acquired 150 acres from the Nature Conservancy. It was an old mining place, and there was a lot of rail activity, but we're going to use that for cultural tourism, possibly spirit camps, ecotourism. So there's a good variety of things you can do with this land. And I mean, boy, it looks like Hawaii, all the miles and miles of sandy beaches there. I've also been active working on gaining title to the 14H1 historical sites that were selected under the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. And there's hundreds of them that have been out here. I've been to nearly every island and beach in Prince William Sound. And sometimes it makes a challenge when you try to find some of these sites after the 64 earthquake, when the southern end of Montague rose some 30 feet and the lands around Whittier sank 8 feet. So you have to adjust where you're looking. If any new cultural sites or artifacts are found, it is recommended that the Forest Service and Chugach be contacted and the cultural remains not be disturbed. In the past, we used to get good-hearted people from the public saying, report to the state troopers, we found these, maybe a murder scene in a burial cave, and they're prehistoric human remains. And so they bring them back to town, and then they say, well, you're right, they're 1,000 years old. They're not a recent murder. It might have been an ancient murder. But so that's what we recommend is just leave them alone, and if you report them to the right authorities would be good. Also, in documenting our prehistoric burial caves, I noticed that a lot of these caves were empty because they were either looted in the name of science or greed. The next. And this led to our travels to various museums around in Europe and across the United States. The Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act is a law that gives clout to the Native people to get funerary objects and human remains back in the U.S. But there's no laws in Europe to do the same thing. So, but we just recently returned from Berlin, Germany, and while they were some of the best people to work with, they have returned funerary objects out of their own heart. And we've been over there 3 times now with delegations from our different villages, and we're developing a cultural working relationship. This is one of the artifacts that was on display in Berlin. It's from the village of Chugach, spruce root hat, I believe. And on top is sea lion whiskers. And let's see. Yeah, some of the other museums we traveled to around the country was the view collections was St. Petersburg, Russia, Helsinki, Finland, Copenhagen, Denmark, London, England, and Madrid, Spain. And a lot of the posters out front are artifacts from those locations as well. All right, the next. These are some other images from Berlin Museum. Grass basket. In fact, we found one of those in the Copper River Delta, eroding out of a silt and sand bed, which was perfectly preserved. We had to keep it in a special solutions. Just ones that are exposed to oxygen, it'll deteriorate fast. And then on the right-hand side is a shaman's pendant from the Copper River Delta area. And I mean, those are chunks of ivory that's either whale teeth or trade goods from down the Dillingham area. Next one. This is a grease bowl from the village of Chugach as well. That was collected. These were collected in the 1880s. But this one, boy, it's had such a strong smell to it. You could just see the seed oil oozing out of this wood. All right, next one. There's a bunch of other grease bowls and seed oil lamps that they had in their collection as well. Next one. Okay, now this is switching gears a little bit. Chugach Heritage Foundation. I should have my youngest daughter, Lauren. She's an executive director of this organization now. And this is a picture of out at Chugach at our spirit camp. It's a large Ongyak or open skin boat we built out there. And we also built about 30 traditional kayaks out there. We had a great instructor, Mitch Poling, the guy on the far right with the cap on, and he was a mathematics and a science teacher at the University of Washington. But he grew up in Chugach as a young boy. His father was a BIA school teacher. All the time, a long time ago, he thought he was Chugach all the time, even though he's from Port Townsend. But he's passed away, and his wife's going to come out and bring his ashes out there and spread them around at Chugach. But what the Heritage Foundation as well has done is, I mean, oh, it's unbelievable. I wish I was growing up back in these days. They've given out millions of dollars for scholarships for all the young kids. If anybody wants to even try a scholarship, any kind of training, we have funding for them. We had some 2,200 applicants that would apply for training for different schooling. Let's see, they're also the Heritage Foundation runs a spirit camp for the last 28 years. We have probably some 50 buildings out there. In fact, we got a better kitchen than most places in Anchorage. So DEC makes us sure we do it right. Stainless steel, everything. We got chlorine injectors out there. We've got pH balancers for the water. I mean, we're trying to get as modern as possible, but at the same time, keep our culture alive. And also what's great is Heritage Foundation is a 501c nonprofit, and they acquired some of their $10 million from the Exxon Valley's Oil Spill Trustee Council for building a new museum and repository. And in Anchorage, we have a 5-acre tract of land and empty land next to the Titilic building on 36th Street. And we're hoping to kick that in high gear, where it's going to be a lot of jobs for people. Artifacts will be in a central location. It's going to be like a village in a city, they're calling it. Besides just museum and a repository. They might have other nonprofits that do housing authority and medical things. So there's a wide variety of things you can do. Let's see here. Yeah, and as I was mentioning, the Spirit Camp has been going on for some 28 years. My daughter came out as a small baby, and now she's got a master's degree in business, and she's coordinating the whole group out there. What the best part about it is our younger generation is now operating this facility where it has a great opportunity to live and work within our region. You look at around our region, some places are ghost towns because there's no development, no opportunity. And we want our people to stay within our region, not have to go to Anchorage just to get a job. Yeah, this island, Chugach, is dedicated to the preservation of our culture, and one of our main goals is remains owned and operated by the native people of the region. At the same time, we're eager to share our history through ecotourism. And if a lot of people here have boats or different charters, in the future, it could be a great opportunity. You could bring people out, visitors, and come out there and enjoy it. Every year during the Spirit Camp, we have a visitors day where we invite a small amount of people just to come out and experience it for a day. We're having two guys coming out that are really good lecturers. One guy has a PhD, did his thesis on the Lieutenant Allen's expedition up the Copper River. So he's going to give a brief presentation this year, and then also another guy from Texas University. And he's going to tell us about the research he's done about core sampling the lakes around Dayton, the different lake sediments around there. So there's a lot of things going on. And we've been in contact with a young lady from Homer that studies sounds of whales. And we're going to try to introduce that to the kids out there to let them hear the sounds of whales. On video, we once filmed a pack of killer whales killing a humpback whale right in front of the village. It's all unbelievable. The mother taught the young babies how to attack, and they bite them on a certain spot right here, and they killed the whale. It's unbelievable. They're tough guys. But anyway, in closing, I want to say thanks for everyone taking the time, and we got a short video, 6 minutes, about the Chugach Spirit Camp. Maybe you might enjoy it. Thank you. Okay, if you want to start it. Yeah, this is we had some good drone footage all around Prince William Sound. This is the people that Captain Cook drew when he first came on, a Chugach man and a Chugach woman. It was a pretty famous poster drawings that he did, drawings. This shows South Central Alaska, zooming into Hinchinbrook Island, and then zooming into Chugach Island. Chugach owns that 800-acre tract of land. It's probably one of our smallest tracts of land, but probably one of our most significant. There's the island of Chugach. This is what Chugach looked like in the late 1900s. This is from Porpoise Rocks. There's a trading post there at one time. There's Bear Cape. These are some of the masks that were repatriated from Smithsonian that came from across the region. This is a big Angiak that was flipped over that people would sleep underneath. This area is right by where the fortress was built in the church area. An abundance of sea otters out there. Here's some other drawings from Captain Cook from his expedition. Some of the hats. This is an early Russian map. These are some of the icons from the church at Chugach. This guy was named Steve Vlasov from Shaniga. This is Fort Ross in California, which is a similar constructed out as Chugach was. A lot of people from Chugach went down there to actually build that fort. This is a trading post at Chugach. Another one of the hats. There's Fort Ross as well. We had the same thing with 8-sided block houses with big fences around the whole place. There's the old church at Chugach, the Transfiguration. And there's an icon that was.
This church was rebuilt on the original foundation ruins and was consecrated in 2002. Chugach is the name of the sound created by the island Chugach, or Hinchinbrook Island. The nearby village was called Kahatlik, and in 1850 had 111 inhabitants. The Chugach Spirit Camp has been in operation since 1995 as a place that is dedicated to the preservation and promotion of the native cultures within the Chugach region.
And these are just, we did a publication of every year of the spirit camp, the cultural camp out there, and just nothing but pictures, not too much of a story. All these young kids are old timers now. And like I mentioned, we built a lot of traditional kayaks out there. And we have people that are newborn babies come out there to people that are 90 years old. This is in Constantine Harbor. This is a young lady from her family is from New Czech originally. There's some of the boats we built. And as usual, you got to have some fun. Sometimes you can't just work all the time. Teach people how to, there's my wife there cooking a manioc sea line over the barbecue. That's one thing is we got some of the best foods out there, as people know. And a big smokehouse where we smoke all the fish, can it. Everybody gets a chance to take a little sample back home and share with their families. This is right at the entrance of Constantine Harbor. It's an island full of puffins. There's the whales. There's one of the whales that went right under our boat, a 20-foot skiff. And there's New Czech in the background. The artist, one of our artists out there, probably did about 30 paintings of all around the people and the places out of New Czech. We got them in our offices hanging up. This is out at Porpoise Rocks. We go out there to get the bidarkies or gumboots, seal hunting. This our chairman of the board, Sherry Beretta. There's some fresh halibut. We're going to be drying it out. And plus, there's Patience Faulkner from Cordova. She did a lot of classes. They do language classes, dance classes as well. That's a steam bath right in the front. This old Henry McCarthy, he's passed away a while ago. But his grandfather was Makari Chilibisky. This guy as well, Joe Tabios, he just passed away. He's 45. He died of cancer. He was one of our kayak builders out there. And the sad part about it, most of the elders they're gone, but I guess that's part of life. You get the young ones coming back up again. We used to, on this day, we flew a lot of kites out there, probably 50 kites on a nice. There's another paintings of all the people having fun. This guy here is one of our presidents. This is our first boat we built out there. Yeah, we built 3-hole. That's a Don Comcoff from Chinita. That's Alex Moonen from Port Graham. That's Sandra Poling. She was a retired lieutenant colonel with the Army that provided. And you can see the grass. That's where the old fortress was built. And we were trying to build those structures away from the archaeological remains. On the left is a schoolhouse. The big building in the middle is our dining hall, 2-story. I think it's about 30 by 70 feet. And when I first started working at Chugach, I had nice black hair, and I don't even have any hair. My eyebrows are longer than my hair in my head. But all the sea lions out there, boy, the killer whales, they round those guys up pretty fast every time, and they come running right to shore. They don't sure which is better to get killed by us or by the sea lions. And that's the end of our story. And maybe we can get you guys a copy of actually hear the sound here one of these times. It's better, more. Thank you.
John is just a wealth of knowledge, and I feel very lucky to work with him and learn from him every day. My name is Ashley Christiansen. I have the honor of working in community development. So what does that mean? I get to work with our regional leaders, tribal leaders, our regional partners, and help our communities identify what their needs are and how could we implement some socioeconomic programs to address those needs, where there may be gaps in services. But the fun part of that is we have, this large region you've been hearing about. And so I get that 360 bird's eye view and help identify what commonalities are, where we could work together, work with our agencies and partners and maybe not duplicate resources and just dig in and see how we could all be stronger and better together, which goes back to, our roots as Chugach people. with that, 2022 kind of brought an interesting transition with the infrastructure funding. Once in a lifetime, with that comes a lot of tribal set aside dollars that have been desperately needed. So working with our communities to ensure that all of their degraded infrastructure is repaired during this time of increased funding has been a real treat. But my hope throughout all of this and with this audience is that you guys could take home, who the Chugach people are, that we do have community members still living here, that as you have projects that come up, they may be stakeholders in or not. If you're not sure who to reach out to, that you can come back to this website and reference Jack, John, or myself. I work as a facilitator too. And as I learn about these issues, I really get to advocate and help be that additional voice for our tribal representatives. And before, let's go to the next slide. So sorry, the pictures are so small, but I think one of the things that makes my job so cool for me is I'm from Cordova and I grew up fishing Prince William Sound, full-time crew by 9, but I was on the boat as a kid. My little sisters were infants when they were out there. But this isn't just about this generation or me growing up. I have photos of my grandmother there, Irene Weber. She was who I really learned what it meant to be deck boss from. And it's kind of fun. I found photos of her. You always got to take a photo with your deck load, and there's one of her, and then there's one of me and my dad and sisters next to that, and then of her plunging, and then me and my sister plunging. And it just shows kind of that this isn't just how we get our money. This is also just who we are as people. It's a subsistence, hardworking lifestyle as well that comes along with it. And what's not featured here is my youngest brother. He's 9 years old, and he's now going to be taking over and gill netting with my dad. And so the tradition really just continues. Next slide, please. And so I kind of high level said, working with regional partners and our tribal leaders. But when you kind of look at it in terms of numbers, you realize even for a small region, we have a lot of partners that we could all be working with. And I haven't even mentioned state or federal agencies and like the Forest Service and folks that are here in the room. But we have 8 communities. This photo is just strictly our Prince William Sound. Of our 8 communities, we have 5 federally recognized tribes, 2 of which are unrecognized tribes, and those are in the communities of Valdez and Seward. Valdez, we have the Valdez Native Tribe. In Seward, we have Chugach Native Tribe. Each of the 5 federally recognized tribes created under INCSA have a village corporation. They are, like the regional corporation, a for-profit entity. They own land like the regional corporation does as well. But at the same time, we are for-profit companies with a nonprofit mission. And so it really does take working collaboratively to meet the needs of our people. And that really, the bottom line there, the 4 regional tribal nonprofits. We have Chugach Regional Resource Commission in the room. They have the delegated authority to manage the natural resources with and on behalf of the tribal leaders for the Chugach region. We have Chugach Mute that does the health and social services. So they run the clinics in the communities. And we have North Pacific Rim Housing Authority who works with low income housing, and they build houses with the tribes in the, really in every community. Yeah, not just our federally recognized ones. But then that's not where the fun stops, because you also have city government. So in Cordova, while there's a tribal government, there's also the city of Cordova. Whereas in Titlik and Chiniga, for example, there is no city, there is no borough. It's just the tribal government that has the sovereign right to determine how the communities ran. And then our communities of Ninwalek and Port Graham have Kenai Peninsula Borough. So when you think getting a project done, you really want to make sure that you've done your outreach with everyone. And our tribal reps, we still don't have internet in Ninwalek and Port Graham that's reliable, and not even at a basic speed. So let alone trying to apply for grants or be compliant with grants. They have to fly to Homer just to have internet service to do so, but to even get a project off the ground. So that's where I think my job is really fun, is getting to communicate with them and help be, that city voice where I have the access to resources and how can I leverage that to help them meet their needs. Next slide. Sorry, you cannot see this very well. I just want to say a great resource if you're trying to understand the complexity of ANCSA is the ANCSA Regional Association. We call them ARA for short. We love our acronyms. But ARA has done a great job of trying to break down what ANCSA actually means in terms of support for the people and all of these, entities that I've just discussed and how we support our people. And really what it comes down to is this unique model of self-determination. And it's this unique constellation of state, tribal, regional, village, and nonprofit entities. We all work together to represent the Alaska Native people. And this is not just in the Chugach region, this is in all 12 regions. Fun fact, Chugach was probably not even going to be a region during ANCSA, and it was our founders who really took the time and fought that we were a distinct people, that we Seri people, Otna people, or Sea Alaska. Prince William Sound is their own Sukpiaq blend, and John kind of said it perfectly. You know, we have Eyak, we have Tlingit, we have Sukpiaq, we have Athabaskan. I am a perfect little Chugach Mutsi. My family comes up from Katella. My great grandmother's family kept the school open in Katella. And then her family, though, came from Kapiagataga. And then on my dad's mom's side, they came from Elamar. But before that, it was Titlik. And I've been on a genealogy kick and found the old village of Kinniclick on Western Prince William Sound. I have roots from there as well. So really, we spread far and wide. We were nomadic in the terms of we went to fish camps. We had a home base. We moved with the seasons, and that's, as a Native corporation, it's kind of interesting because if you took away the word corporation and you took away the word shareholders, I think that would be a true representation of what we do for our people and what our mission really is. We are different than like lower 48 tribal reservations, so it is a complex system. But I am grateful to have had this established prior to my time. I am a product of the regional corporations being successful. I have received my education through funding. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go to Chugach Spirit Camp because I was stuck on a boat fishing. But, cultural programs weren't even really an option when I was a child. And now Cordova has just done this great work revitalizing it. And there's folks getting to do traditional arts and crafts even. And that's huge. It really helps just connect you to even the processing of the animals. So this is a little bit of the business side. ANCSA Regional Association is a great resource there. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is our Chugach constellation. And it's so small, I won't even go over it, but it really outlines the entities that support the Chugach region. And I do have these in flyers. I'll make sure on a table. And if anyone is interested, they can grab that. Next slide, please. One of the fun things that we get to do too is connect as a region. We have regional roundtables. All the different leaders from all of that constellation of entities come together and talk about what are our priorities. And really, we have it in three main buckets. Infrastructure. Everything is, I would say, past its serviceable life. Community sustainability, that goes into subsistence and food security too, which to me, I'm so grateful for the work that CIRC does on behalf of the tribal reps. That advocacy piece for subsistence too is so critical to just the way of life, especially you could see here, it's one of the main priorities. And really that boils down to having healthy communities. And what John was saying, we want to keep our people in the community, and how can they have financial freedom and provide for their family, but still live a traditional lifestyle, but also participate in the modern world. And that could come down to, even internet as a basic need. And the advocacy piece, again, that's what we can bring to the table as a regional corporation. Next slide. How am I on time? Okay, a few more minutes. So we'll just kind of highlight each of our communities here real quick. We'll go to Chiniga first, and that's on the lower Western Prince William Sound. So in Chuniga, our tribal representation is that of the native village of Chuniga. And they also, as a federally recognized tribe, have a village corporation, two totally separate entities, just how they're created under INCSA. And that would be the Chuniga Corporation. I bring up New Chuniga. How many were on the boat ride yesterday? A few of us. Great. Glad we went yesterday, by the way. But they talked about, the Good Friday earthquake and the tsunami that wiped out the traditional village of Chuniga. And what is interesting is that happened right in 64, but it wasn't until 1977 when they were able to start finding new area that they could build the new community in. And it wasn't the new village of Chuniga in Chuniga Bay on Evans Island wasn't established until I believe 1984 around. It's right here in my notes, 1984, yes. But it was a third of the residents that were killed then. And so you think about that time period where folks didn't necessarily, they lost their family and they didn't necessarily have a home to go to. So Cordova, again, being kind of a hub for Prince William Sound, we have a lot of Chuniga residents that would move there, Seward, Valdez, Anchorage. And Chuniga is one of our smallest communities really as a result of all this. They are resilient though. They have about 59 folks and it is continuing to grow. Chuniga Corporation themselves is heavily invested in bringing infrastructure improvement and economic development to the community so that we can get their villagers back in the community. There's a lot of projects that are kicking off. Some of you in the room may be having some of those projects as well. Fiber and phone connectivity is going to be massive for them, as well as anyone that recreates or does any business in Western Prince William Sound. Cordova Telephone Co-op did win a grant to lay fiber to Seward, and unlike what has happened in the past, where folks didn't branch off to our villages, they are actually creating a branch to come up to Chuniga, and they also won funding to bring fiber to the home. So currently they use DSL satellite. So this is going to be a game changer for the residents there to even be able to meet, water sampling needs and upload things for basic compliance as a community to maintain themselves. I also want to say the Rio Tinto cleanup at Beatson Mine across from Chuniga at Latouche Island is going on. They're starting their outreach. Very great outreach, making sure that every stakeholder is involved, gives their input and what their concerns are. We have Michelle, if you could raise your hand. Michelle is in the room. She works with Alaska Earth Sciences. She's actually involved in that project and I just ran into her. So it's great. If anyone has questions, please go to her. And next slide, please. Next, we'll go to my hometown, Cordova. And so while Cordova, I said, has a city, we also have the native village of Eyak there, and the Eyak Corporation is the village corporation. One of the fun things that you guys are realizing that's funding is coming to Prince William Sound in terms of mariculture. Cordova has been operating in this space for a long time through the Native Conservancy. They're based out of there. And a lot of our tribal representatives and Chugach shareholders work for them. And so we're seeing leases come through for our shareholders and descendants that are getting involved in that space as well. They have permits that have been approved. So just a reminder, as we're all out in Prince William Sound, I believe, October through May, there will be pens set up and we need to keep an eye out for those now. Shepherd Point is a project that will go bring the road past Orca Lodge and bring it to the north side of Cordova, and there's deep water access there. That's a project that's currently kind of live real time trying to work that out. But I go back to the cultural revitalization. It's just amazing to see what folks are doing and bringing our culture back to the youth, but also the elders, and creating a space for them to come together and communicate and tell stories of what happened to this land in the region and how things are different and how it was and how we can kind of blend the two. Housing development, Cordova has a housing crisis just like everywhere else in these coastal communities. But just a little plug that there's harbor construction kicking off this year, next year. And so if you are traveling to Cordova, keep that in mind. Booking places is going to be really difficult. So advanced planning for your trips there is going to be critical. Next, we'll go to Titlik. And Titlick is has about 90 full-time residents as of the last census. Home, unfortunately, to where Exxon Valdez tanker oil spill happened out on Bly Reef, right, in their stomping ground. So they have been really boots on the ground from the beginning. Cleanup efforts, just like the residents of Cordova and Whittier, anywhere in the Sound was. They're really resilient people. They have a lot of infrastructure improvements, a lot of needs, just like Chugach, just like Whittier. Really, one of the big focuses is for a safe harbor and getting a breakwater built. They just hosted their annual cultural camp last week. I went to that as a child. It's a great opportunity again to connect. Next slide, please. Valdez. So going back to the oil spill and oil spill response, there's a partnership between Chugach Corporation, Titlick Corporation, and Chugach Alaska Corporation. And we have an entity called TCC, and we do oil spill response. We have contracts with Alyeska Pipeline. And that goes back to, our people were first responders. And when the Exxon Valdez oil spill happened, we should be training our people and our community residents to be first responders should there be another one. SERVs, if anyone here participates in SERVs, that's also a Chugach contract. So that's just, we're housed out of Valdez. Valdez Native Tribe, they are our unrecognized tribe, but they operate as a 501(c) tribal organization to provide services for the Chugach people that live in Valdez. One of the highlights I'll just say is Jack Bay. They have a rather large acreage pen that was just approved to do mariculture services in Jack Bay. So keep an eye out if you love that. That's at the end of Valdez Arm, just around from Titlick. Next slide, please. And Whittier, where we have no tribal representation. However, Whittier is the gateway for all of our communities to really have road access. Yes, there's Valdez, but as a Cordova resident myself, I've spent a lot of time in Whittier, mainly at the shops if I'm waiting for the ferry dock to open, or just getting online in the ferry. But that one of the big things that we really do advocate for on behalf of our communities is that ferry service and ensuring that it's not when there's gaps in service that there's a sustainable option to have people not be stuck, especially right at the end of fishing season when everyone is waited to come up to Anchorage and get their big projects done. That's very critical. But with that, we at least have our other transportation services. We rely on the barge services here. They bring stuff out to Chugach, Chugach, the transportation services, Lazy Otter, like we used yesterday. And in the top right photo is the map of the land that we own in purple. And so what some folks may not know is the end of the road that currently exists before you hit Shotgun Cove. Chugach owns the land just up to the end, and there's an easement granted for that road to be punched through. And we do support the Shotgun Cove project. We have land we would love to be able to utilize that's in the cove as well. And I believe my final slide here is this concept of intergenerational prosperity. It's something our board has been really focused on for the last decade plus, and it goes back to our cultural roots and really how we can give back. I feel like part of my reciprocity is I received so much from the corporation. Me working for the corporation is my way of giving back. But we are resilient people. We have a responsibility to be good stewards of the land and of everything that resides in the land, and to be respectful. So, as everyone's out recreating or doing their business in the Sound, please remember that there are the Chugach people there that have been there, and it is their home. And just the reciprocity of respect goes both ways. So thank you for your time. I believe we just have one more slide, which will also be online, and it'll provide all of the email and contact addresses for those of us that spoke today. And I'll invite Jack up to take any questions.
Any more? Go ahead, Paul.
That was one question.
What is the association between Chugach National Corporation and the first folks who spoke, the Chugach Resources Mission? And part of the same entity?
Ashley, do you want to take this one? I'm going to punt this one.
So to repeat the question, what is the difference between Chugach Alaska Corporation and Chugach Regional Resource Commission? Okay, great. So Chugach Alaska Corporation is that regional corporation created under INCSA. We have the mission to provide the social, cultural, and economic support for our people, and we own land. We also have nonprofits that the tribal members in Chugach delegate our authority to serve. And the tribal members came together and just said, you know, what INCSA did was created a lot of need and expectation on a regional corporation to do everything for its people. It makes more sense to kind of divide and conquer. Chugach Regional Resource Commission was created with tribal leaders from each of our communities as the board of directors. They are their own standalone nonprofit with the mission to protect the natural resources of the region. With that, they started the shellfish hatchery in Seward. They help with the subsistence rights. I mean, Willow could go on. I think you've done presentations with this group before, but yeah, we are completely distinct entities. However, we do collaborate and support the work that CIRC does on behalf of our people because we all have the same mission.